Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Henchman's Memoirs. This is our 5e campaign diary of our Dark Souls of Drakkenheim campaign. When we last left off our story, the players were in the sewers underneath the inner city. They had followed a pack of ghouls here who might be associated with the cult of Orcus. And, of course, Thaddeus, the gnome druid, has a personal quest involving getting his family's tapestry rug thing back, and he had found out that it had been taken by the cult of Orcus, because on the back of it, like in National Treasure, on the back of their family rug is this secret incantation to call forth a servant of Orcus and so forth. So they followed the ghouls down here, but I immediately had to jump back into a flashback, because in the chat between the different players and I, in between sessions, it had come up that Nexel had shot off a fireball in front of the Drakkenheim city garrison where all of these hooded lanterns were. And of course, he is not a registered licensed mage with the Amethyst Academy. And in my campaign, using arcane magic when you're not part of the Orcus society or whatever, like, that will get you arrested by the Inquisition. That will get you burnt by the witch hunters, right? So I wanted to kind of bring this back in, because his player, Nexel's player, had the choice when the campaign began. He could be a registered mage, and I didn't say, oh, and here are the awful consequences if you are. No, he had a chance to be a registered mage, and like so many players, he was like, nah, I want to be an outlaw, I want to be a rebel. And I'm like, well, you know that's going to mean that you have to kind of hide your hag-born nature, and you have to hide your magic use and stuff. And he's like, oh, no problem, it's going to be great. So we flashed back, and he put this little thing in the text of how he's trying to convince Elias Drexel and all the other hooded lanterns, that, oh, maybe some shadowy figure, came out of a alleyway and shot that fireball. And so I had him roll a deception check, and he was honest and put his low roll in the chat. And Elias Drexel has like a +7 to his intuition, or whatever it is, where you try to figure out somebody's, used to be sense motive, where you try to sense somebody's motive and stuff. Insight is what they call it nowadays. So Elias Drexel was now super suspicious of him, and he kept going. He doubled down on the lie. And he was like, oh, maybe all these undead had like swamp gases coming off of them, and maybe that was maybe the slightest spark would have, all this sewer gas was attached to these things. So now he's going for an even more outrageous lie. And he was not rolling great. Now we were actually playing, and he was trying this, and he used his DM's inspiration, but he wasn't doing great. And it ended up becoming a whole party. Everybody was involved in the lie. I think, I'm trying to remember who came forward. I think it might have been Atticus, the artificer, who first of all, Thaddeus tried to just distract him by talking about the fact that Elias Drexel has one of the great seals of Drakkenheim, but he wasn't going to be distracted by that. But then Atticus jumps in and says, you want to talk about unlicensed mages? Did you know that Oscar Yoren, who was supplying your potions, was also an unlicensed mage? And what about that? No, the cult of Orcus and everything. So he managed to kind of give Nexel a chance to kind of reset and try once again to try to pull this lie off. And he rolled a little better. So now Elias Drexel is suspicious of them, but he's still willing to work with them. But he told Petra Lang to like keep an eye on him. The party I think it was Nexel, tried to say, well, listen, you guys aren't the Amethyst Academy. What do you care if there's an unlicensed mage running around? But what his player didn't realize is like, no one wants to deal with unlicensed mages. It's not like, oh, well, you're not a Jedi, so why do you care that I'm a Sith? Everybody cares that you're a Sith, So anyway, off where the players couldn't see it, I did a little cutscene where Elias Drexel was telling Petra to keep a close eye on Nexel. And this was when the players reminded me Actually, she already knows that he's an unlicensed mage because they rescued her from the rat's den, the rat's nest, and she had seen him using arcane spells, and she already knew, but she was covering for them. So I guess Elias Drexel isn't going to get a lot of benefit out of telling her to keep an eye on them. So anyway, the party gets down into the sewer, and they're able to pretty quickly roll some good survival checks to figure out which way these retreating ghouls had gone. You'll never guess what. It's not over here completely off the map. It's not over here completely off the map. You'll never guess what. They kind of followed the actual path that actually stays on the map. So the party starts coming down here, and they're following these tracks. And when they reach this intersection, I'm having people roll perception checks. And, you know, some of y'all hate it when your DM asks you to roll a perception check and you only roll a 7. He's like, okay, don't worry about it. Just go on. But Atticus got this far, and he noticed over here there was this octarine glow. Octarine is the color that's nowhere on the normal visual spectrum. But he saw something glowing down there, and so he started to head down this way, and that's when this delirium sludge, animated delirium sludge, comes out between the rocks. So these are a custom monster from the Dungeons of Drakkenheim book, and they're basically like a black pudding, but they are made of contaminated delirium sludge, right? So so these guys start lining up. I think Nexel came over here so he could get line of sight. Pietor, once again, has no melee ability of any kind, so he just kind of stands back here, and he's like, I'm just going to see if it comes close. Or no, he has no ranged ability of any kind, so he's like, I'm just going to stand back here and see if it gets any closer. The party starts moving up, and this is when they find out the way the dungeon dudes wrote this thing up. It can just move into the space of occupied by a medium creature. It doesn't have to make an attack. It can just move into your space and stop there. But then once it does, it can use its engulf ability. And if it engulfs you, then you're restrained, then you're grappled, and at the beginning of its next turn, you're not only going to take enough, I guess it would have been necrotic damage or poison damage, whatever it is, you're not only going to take enough damage to kill most of these players, but you're also, even if you survive, going to take a level of contamination. So contamination is a big deal in the Dungeons of Drakkenheim campaign, and I just haven't been able to get my characters contaminated. One of the NPCs, Gerda or whatever her name is, from the Smithy on the Scar got contaminated, but I haven't been able to contaminate any of my actual players, and I really want to get them, you know, to have the full Drakkenheim experience. I want to get them contaminated. So, one cool thing, though, is once you're grappled, you're not going to take that crippling damage and contamination until the beginning of its next turn, and somebody can reach in and grab you and pull you out, which I think is a kind of a fun thing. So Atticus is fighting this thing, and you know, the urban rangers are trying to shoot at it, and I think Nexel might have done a twin spell or what anything, and old Thaddeus was peeking around the corner and trying to decide what kind of spell he wanted to use when they found out why I had been asking them to roll spot checks, perception checks. There was another one hidden in the rocks back here, and they couldn't see the glow. So now they've got, you know, the thing only brutal, unkind DMs do, which is where you line up for battle, and then all of a sudden he sends an equally dangerous menace against your back line where everybody who wants to stay out of combat is. So the big deal in this combat was that Thaddeus can use dissonant whispers or something like that, and not only does it do damage to you, but it forces you to withdraw as your reaction your total movement, which I think these things had 30 or 40 feet of movement. So so it was forced to withdraw. It had Atticus grappled, but it can't carry him through the 1-inch openings over here, and so it basically dropped him and moved, you know, beyond their line of sight where they can't see it. It's squishing through little cracks and stuff in the foundations. And they start trying to fight this one over here. And again, the problem is these things only take half damage from non-magical weapons. So Thaddeus, so both the Urban Rangers were doing pittances of damage. Nexel gets engulfed partially, and the monk comes over here and starts spending all of his key points trying to take this thing down. This one comes back. He dissonant whispers it again. It moves off. It comes back. In the meantime, between Nexel and Pietor, I think they managed to get this one down to 0 hit points. There might have been some critical hits involved. And because they were using magic, it kind of just dissolves into a whole bunch of jello in this whole area. And then after this one was boomeranged back for the 3rd or 4th time, I think Atticus might have finished it off with his Spirit and Magic Helmet, with his magic hammer, and driven it off, or it was destroyed or whatever. And of course the party wants to look around for treasure, in an encounter like this. So I decided that there was a very special pocket of snot in this thing that would be a particularly good spell component or component for Atticus to use. So now he has a wineskin full of 5 doses of Eldritch Abomination snot. So they keep following the tracks through the dungeon, and they come to this sort of little roundabout area here. They look down here as they're going this way, and as they look down here, they see these sort of weird mutant fishmen down this hallway. These sort of deep ones kind of guys, like way down here down this hallway. So what's happening with this is there's a series of encounters. There's a little story that goes on in the swamp, in the sewers later on, and I was thinking of linking it to their trek through the sewers here, maybe teasing it, or maybe they could go off this way and do that and then come back, or whatever, right? And then I actually looked in the Drakkenheim book, and it's considerably over-leveled for where they are at 5th level. The whole thing in the city cistern, it's called, they're just not ready for that. But I still wanted to hint that there was more going on in the sewers of the inner city. So I let them see these guys, but I just kind of broke character and told them, they look down there and they see a quest marker hovering over these guys' head, and it's like got a big red skull and crossbones, to let them know they're not level appropriate for this little side quest. And while they were doing this, I also had Nexel have another one of his apocalyptic visions. That's his personal quest for why he's here. He keeps having these apocalyptic visions. And he had a vision where Sylvia, I think, or Sylvania, is this girl that he sees in all his visions, but he has no idea who she is. And she basically... he stopped in time in this same intersection but with a different group, and they're about to go down and explore what's down this hallway. And she basically says, this is the point of no return. And she says, that the point of no return, you don't realize when it's happening. You don't realize when it suddenly becomes too late to stop the corruption. And then she grabs him by the head and she's like, Argonath is the key, which is what she's been telling him in all of her visions, that Argonath is the key. So he snaps out of it. He's rolling around in the sewage, and they pull him out, and they let these guys kind of get away, and they keep going through the sewers. So they follow the tracks a little further, and they come across this, the Temple of Orcus itself, right? Back here is this sinister-looking altar where they're have inscribed pentagrams and all this stuff. There's a bunch of there's 5 naked females who are chained up around the base of this kind of plinth, and there's this gross guy who's the high priest of Orcus. And I actually took his stats from the Grim Hollow Monster Grimoire, He's based on this monster that uses blood magic and empowers his sidekicks and stuff with blood magic. So I've got him for that. There are these creepy, fleshy abominations, which are his acolytes, which are lined up here on the sides. And of course, Elvira, the Alp from the Witcher game, in her low-cut black dress, who escaped before, is here now to fight them to the death. So the party had a second. They were kind of around this corner, and they had a second to really think and plan and decide what they were going to do. But they couldn't keep their promise to Elias Drexel to only sort of scout out the area and then return without getting into a fight, because they were in the process. There was a mist, a blood-like mist that was coming from these screaming captives and was coalescing over this altar, that they were about ready to call forth some servant of Orcus. And even more so, hanging back here above the altar was the family rug of good old Thaddeus, the gnome druid. So it was all or nothing. There was no time to go for reinforcements. They had to make it happen. So of course, Nexel goes first, and he steps out here and he fires a fireball, trying to get it so he can get this guy and as many of these acolytes as possible without getting these women that are down here. So he kind of centers it up here somewhere, gets this guy, blows them up, but the family rug starts smoldering from the flames, and poor Thaddeus like, no, my family rug, that's my whole quest. So these guys quickly try to get up here. The rangers are basically out here shooting arrows and stuff, and the melee becomes quite chaotic quite quickly. So this guy was able to try to make people's blood boil, which everybody saved against that during the fight. And these guys didn't have much abilities, but he could make them explode in this explosion of boiling blood, if they got the chance. So the party didn't give them a chance. These guys, I think, were more or less taken out by that fireball. And I know Atticus got up here and was fighting the high priest, and Pietor was reigniting his battle against her. So somebody sent a spell up here that got rid of these guys. I think I might have been able to use one of them in this explosion thing. Thaddeus was using spike growth or something that he took a bunch of them out with, and then Nexel decides to try chromatic orb. And so the chromatic orb streaks out at the high priest. He misses. I think he rolled like a 1 or a 2, and he had chosen fire. So now that hits the precious family rug, and now it's burning even worse. And he's like running around, no, my family rug. So she dealt some serious damage to Dirtnap Pete. Every time he uses a key point, he gets to disengage. So he gets all the way up here, and he's trying to lure her up there, but she doesn't want to see the high priest get killed. So I think she chose to get up here with Atticus, and Thaddeus on his turn unleashes a wind wall. He finds out he can structure it any way he wants. She was standing here at the time, and I think maybe one of these guys was left. So he had the wind wall come down, around, over, hit the high priest, and then finally end on his rug and put out the beginnings of the smoldering of his precious rug. And then Atticus, with his artificer glove and shield and everything, finally took out my high priest. And once again, she was so. The third-party supplement gave her the ability evasive or something, where everybody has disadvantage on attacks against her. She's got a lot of hit points, and with that evasive thing, even with everybody piling on her, they weren't going to be able to get her. So she goes ahead and tries to get one last hit on Dirtnap Pete, and then she becomes gaseous. And we were completely out of time, and we had to end right there. But there's so much more. They need to free these girls and find out who they are. They need to search the rest of the temple. Maybe they can even find the coffin of Elvira, the sexy vampire. But we'll find out next time. Join us for the Henchman's Memoirs.